I am the lens that did not see the bullet that would silence a generation. John Lennon, 1980. I was born in a factory in Japan in the spring of 1979, a precision instrument crafted by skilled hands that knew nothing of fate. Layer upon layer of glass, carefully polished and aligned, became my being. I remember the strange sensation of first focusing light, not seeing as humans do, but capturing, translating the world into something that could be preserved. They placed me in a protective case, packed me carefully alongside my camera body, and shipped me across an ocean to America. I was destined for professional hands, they said. I would capture history, they promised. How true those words would become in ways no one could have imagined. By summer of 1980, I had found my purpose attached to a news camera in New York City. My human partner, a veteran photojournalist with the steady hands of experience, took me everywhere. We documented the pulse of the city, political rallies, celebrity sightings, the everyday drama of urban life unfolding before my glass eye. I learned to read the subtle pressure changes of his fingers, to anticipate the moment he would press the button that opened my aperture to the flood of light and truth. New York in 1980 was a city of contrasts. Through me, my human captured the gleaming towers of Manhattan, rising above streets where poverty and wealth coexisted in uneasy balance. I witnessed the aftermath of a decade of cultural revolution, the fading echoes of disco, the rising energy of punk and new wave, the continuing struggle for equality. I documented it all with unflinching clarity. What makes a lens different from human eyes is that I hold no judgment. I merely collect light, translate reality without filters of emotion or bias. Or so I thought. What I didn't understand then was how the hands that held me, the mind that directed my gaze, shaped what I would witness and preserve for posterity. By December of that year, my human and I had developed a wordless partnership. He trusted me to capture what he saw, and I trusted him to point me toward moments worth remembering. We had no way of knowing that on a cold winter night, outside an elegant apartment building on the Upper West Side, we would become reluctant, witnesses to a moment that would change music, change culture, change the world. A moment of darkness that even my light-gathering abilities could not fully illuminate. December 8th, 1980. The air was crisp with winter's approach as my human adjusted, me checking my settings with practiced fingers. We were stationed outside the Dakota, that Gothic fortress of luxury apartments on the corner of 72nd Street and Central Park West. My human had received a tip that John Lennon might be returning home that evening. John Lennon, even as an object, made of glass and metal, I had learned his significance through countless images my human had shown me over months of work. The Beatle, the activist, the artist who had retreated from public life for 5 years to raise his son and find himself only to emerge again with a new album, Double Fantasy, released just weeks before. We weren't the only ones waiting. Other photographers and a small cluster of fans stood in the gathering darkness, breath fogging in the cold air. Some clutched albums, hoping for an autograph. My human positioned us carefully, adjusting my focal length for the distance from sidewalk to entrance. "He's been generous with his time lately," my human murmured to a colleague. "More approachable than he's been in years." Hours passed. My glass elements contracted slightly in the deepening cold. Then shortly before 11 p.m., a limousine pulled up to the curb. There was a shift in energy among the waiting humans, an electric anticipation that I had learned to recognize. The car door opened. John emerged first, slim in black, his familiar, round glasses catching the streetlight. Yoko followed. My human's heartbeat quickened. I could feel it through his grip. He raised me, and suddenly John Lennon filled my view. That distinctive profile, the slight hunch of his shoulders against the December chill. A young man approached him, holding out a copy of Double Fantasy. Through my precise optics, I captured the moment perfectly. John's slight smile, the pen moving across the album cover, the fans' look of reverence. "Thank you, John," the young man said, his voice quiet but clear in the night air. "No problem," John replied with that Liverpool accent that had charmed millions. My human adjusted my aperture to compensate for the low light. John and Yoko moved toward the arched entrance of the Dakota. In my frame, they were just two people going home after a long day, not icons, not legends, just a husband and wife, walking close together through the cold New York night, unaware that these ordinary movements would soon be frozen in tragic significance. They were nearly at the entrance when it happened. My human had lowered me slightly, preparing to pack up for the night, assuming the moment had passed. His fingers were just beginning to loosen when the sound came, sharp cracks that echoed off the stone facade of the Dakota. My human jerked in surprise, raising me instinctively toward the sound. But I am not designed to capture sound, only light, and in that crucial fraction of a second, I was pointed at the wrong angle. I did not see the young man who had asked for an autograph only moments before. I did not see the gun in his hand. I did not see the bullets that tore through John Lennon's body. What I did capture, in the chaotic seconds that followed, was the aftermath. John on the ground, Yoko kneeling beside him, her face contorted in a scream I could not hear, but could feel in the sudden trembling of my human's hands, the doorman rushing forward, the look of disbelief on the faces of onlookers. My human's finger pressed repeatedly on my shutter button, an instinctive response born from years of journalistic training. Even in shock, he documented. Through me, he preserved the moment when peace became violence, when music became silence, when a cultural voice was brutally cut short. I captured the blood spreading across John's black coat, appearing almost like a shadow in the dim light. I captured the rushed arrival of police, the desperate loading of John's limp body into the back of a patrol car rather than waiting for an ambulance. A decision made in the frantic knowledge that every second counted. But I never saw the bullet. I never saw the exact moment when hatred intersected with art, when the abyss that sometimes lives in troubled minds erupted into the physical world. That critical moment remained just outside my frame, just beyond my glass eye's capacity to witness and record. Later, they would say Mark David Chapman fired 4 hollow-point bullets at point-blank range. They would say 2 penetrated John's left shoulder, to his back, 1 severing his aorta. They would say he staggered up 6 steps to the reception area before collapsing. But I did not see these things. I saw only the before and after, not the terrible transition between them. The hours that followed were a blur of motion and light. My human rushed me to his newspaper's offices, his hands still trembling as he removed me from the camera body. I was connected to equipment that extracted the images I had captured. Voices around us were urgent, disbelieving. "Is it confirmed?" someone asked. "Roosevelt Hospital," another replied. "It doesn't look good." Soon after, the official announcement came. John Lennon was pronounced dead on arrival at Roosevelt Hospital at 11:07 p.m. At age 40, the man who had asked us to imagine peace was killed in an act of senseless violence. My images, the last moments of John alive, signing an autograph for the man who would kill him minutes later, flashed across news wires around the world. I became the unwitting creator of a historical document, the eye that preserved the final mundane act of an extraordinary life. In the days that followed, I watched through my human's viewfinder as the city, then the world, mourned. A spontaneous gathering formed outside the Dakota, growing by the hour. Thousands of people stood in silent vigil, holding candles that flickered like earthbound stars against the December darkness. They sang his songs, Imagine, Give Peace a Chance, All you need is love. Their voices rising into the night air where his voice would never sound again. Central Park, just across from where John had fallen, became an unofficial memorial ground. My human took me there on Sunday, December 14th, when more than 100,000 people gathered for 10 minutes of silence. Through my lens, I saw their tears, their embraces, their homemade signs expressing grief and love. I saw how the death of one man could stop a city, could create a moment of unity among strangers. I captured images of young and old, rich and poor, people of all races standing shoulder to shoulder. John had sung about imagining all the people sharing all the world, and in their mourning for him, they were doing just that, finding common ground in their shared loss. "The dream is over," one sign read, quoting John's own words from years earlier. But looking through my glass eye at the sea of humanity united in peaceful remembrance, my human and I could see that the dream lived on, even as the dreamer was gone. In the weeks and months that followed, I continued my work with my human, but something had changed between us. His hands seemed heavier when he held me, his eye more solemn when he looked through my viewfinder. We had become part of a narrative neither of us had chosen, witnesses to an ending that should never have happened. The images I had captured on that December night became iconic. They appeared in newspapers, magazines, books, documentaries. They became reference points in the cultural memory, the last moments of John Lennon's life, preserved through my glass elements, etched into history through my mechanical eye. My human was invited to speak about that night, to describe what he had seen, what he had felt. He spoke of the ordinary quality of the moment, just a man going home, and how quickly it had transformed into the extraordinary, the death of an icon. He spoke of the strange intimacy of photography, how the lens creates both distance and connection between the observer and the observed. What he couldn't explain, what I felt through the subtle tremors in his hands whenever we passed the Dakota, was the weight of having been there, of having almost, but not quite, captured the moment of transition from life to death, the burden of the witness. Spring came to New York, melting the last of winter's snow. The impromptu memorial outside the Dakota gradually diminished, though fresh flowers appeared daily. Strawberry Fields, a section of Central Park directly across from the building, was designated as a formal memorial. My human took me there on what would have been John's 41st birthday, October 9th, 1981. I captured images of the simple design centered around a circular mosaic with a single word, imagine. People from around the world came to that spot, leaving flowers, singing softly, sitting in contemplation. Through my lens, I saw their faces, some who had grown up with the Beatles, others too young to remember John alive, but touched nonetheless by his music, his message. I realized then that while bullets can silence a voice, they cannot silence an echo. John's words, his music, his ideals continued to resonate, amplified perhaps by the manner of his passing. The images I had captured became part of that echo. Painful, yes, but also important. A reminder of human fragility and the random cruelty that can interrupt even the most meaningful lives. Years have passed now. My glass has aged, developed small imperfections that my makers never intended. My human has used me less frequently, as newer technology has emerged, but he has never sold me, never replaced me. I remain with him, a silent partner in memory. Sometimes he takes me out and holds me up to the light, turning me gently in hands that have grown older but no less careful. I wonder if he sees in my glass elements, a reflection of that night. If the images I captured have somehow become part of my physical being. 40 years after John Lennon's death, my human took me back to the Dakota. It was December 8th, 2020, a year of global pandemic, of isolation and loss on a scale few had imagined possible. Despite restrictions on gatherings, people still came to remember. They stood distanced from one another, masks covering their faces, but not hiding the emotion in their eyes. Through my aging lens, I captured this new generation of mourners. Some hadn't been born when John lived, yet they carried his songs in their hearts, found meaning in his words across the decades. I saw parents explaining to children who John was, what he had stood for. I saw teenagers with Beatles t-shirts, standing solemnly beside grey-haired fans who had screamed for the band at Shea Stadium in 1965. What does it mean to witness history? To be the eye that preserves a moment for those who weren't there to see it firsthand. Over my years of service, I've come to believe that my purpose was never simply to capture light, but to capture truth. The small human truths that together form the mosaic of our shared story. I never saw the bullet that silenced John Lennon. My glass eye was turned away at that crucial moment. But perhaps that absence, that missing frame, speaks its own truth. That violence is always a rupture, a break in the narrative of human connection. What matters is not the moment of breaking, but what came before and what follows after. John once sang, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." Through my lens, I've learned that history works the same way. It happens in the ordinary moments, in people going about their lives, in the quiet courage of continuing despite loss. The most important things are rarely the dramatic climaxes, but the persistent human effort to create meaning, to connect, to imagine. I am just a lens, an object made of glass and metal. But I have witnessed the light of human resilience, the enduring power of art to unite us across time and space. Long after my glass has clouded and my mechanical parts have failed, that light will remain, captured not just in images, but in the hearts of those who keep imagining the world John Lennon asked us to create together.